Are you a real estate investor looking to sharpen your skills or a newbie looking to become one? You're in the right place. Welcome to Where Should I Invest? Real Estate Investing in Canada with your host, Sarah Larby.
You've been in the market for a long time. You probably have lots of insights. You might have, some regrets. Like, do you ever regret selling any of the real estate along the way?
I think we regret not buying more at the time. The only one that we've sold is the one in Thorold, and that kind of had some issues. They passed a bylaw that our property couldn't conform with. So we were kind of stuck with an illegal basement unit, and it just seemed like a kind of a ticking time bomb. So we sold that, and we made good money on it. So we were happy. But anytime we bought a property, Matt's always been the one that's like pushing. And I've usually, until in the last couple of years, been like, whoa, this is crazy, like slow down, because we didn't know anybody else doing it. We were the only people really that we knew investing, and all of our friends and family thought we were nuts buying all these properties. But so every time we bought one, I'd be like, oh man, we're gonna be broke, like we're eating craft dinner for the rest of our lives. And I thought it was just, we were just so nervous about it. But then a few years later, I'm like, why didn't we buy 10? Like, why didn't we buy more? So I think that's been our regret, is just seeing like the market going up. But I mean, we're so thankful that we have what we have, because the appreciation has been like absolutely life-changing. But yeah, I think that would be our regret, is that we didn't buy more. But
I wasn't sure if, now that you're back in the Kawarthas, the cottage sale would be a potential regret.
Yeah, I think that is a regret. But it's kind of what started the student rental investing. Like, I don't know if I would have gone that route if I hadn't sold that. And like, I was 18 when we bought the cottage. I didn't go to university. I was going to be a mechanic at a school. I did that for 2 years. Was making decent money for an 18-year-old at the time, and spending on stupid stuff. And my parents told me that if I don't start spending my money wisely, they were going to make me pay rent. So that's what started the saving up for something. And then that cottage came up. So I wouldn't have been able to buy a student rental in Guelph for a long time if I hadn't sold that cottage, because then I went to college for business, and then I went to college for civil engineering, and then I bought the first student rental while I was in college. So I don't regret it. It would be nice to have now. It was a cool cottage, but it was, I think, 56 stairs up from the lake. There was this huge flight of concrete stairs, which made the views wicked, but it wasn't hard to. Yeah, it wasn't a perfect cottage for everybody.
Yeah.
No, for sure. And sometimes, you do have to sell so that you can reinvest. And but there's many people that are like, hey, is the market at the top? Should I sell now? I'm like, well, like, is that money just going to sit in your account, or do you have another spot for it? And it sounds like you guys had another spot for it. And that's usually, if you're going to have to sell, a reason to potentially, liquidate a little bit so that you can acquire more and keep going. So you've got lots of different strategies that you've done. Sounds like, from the cottage, AirBNB or VRBO back then, and student rentals, and then the Burr and, multifamily. Do you have a favorite today, a favorite strategy?
I think probably, like, we didn't even know, like I said, what the Burr was, but now that we have a name for it, it seems kind of great. Like, we always thought when we bought these rentals, if it didn't cost us money, we thought we were just like laughing to the bank. Like, somebody's going to pay our mortgage, pay our expenses, and at the end of 25 years, like, we get a free house. Like, that seemed amazing to us. And then to realize that now with appreciation and refinance and all these different things that we've learned about, that we can actually take the money out and buy another property. We can do something like put in a pool we did recently with some of the real estate money, and just live our life. Like, that's been completely life-changing for us. So I would say the Burr is definitely our favorite. We certainly haven't done a perfect Burr. They've been perfect multiple times over, but in a long period of time. So we've gotten like our money out and then some. Like, some of our properties have paid us like 3 or 4 times over. So like, we have nothing into them. So I think that's been pretty awesome. So I would say Burr, but we didn't know what it was at the time.
Amazing. And often I speak to, people that are investing, and some have, been doing it for 5 years or 10 years, but you guys have been doing this for a long time. And, if we looked at the market in 2020, versus all the many years that you have been investing? Like, what do you have if somebody's just starting out today and they're like, oh, well, it was different back then. We could buy something for like $100,000, $200,000. What insights do you have or tips that you can share with somebody wanting to get in today?
I think that it was different back then, but I also spoke to some friends who were considering getting into investing like 3 or 4 years ago, and kind of felt like some of the advice I gave them back then was, well, it's different now. The prices have gone up a lot. I don't know if they're going to go up too much more. And it's kind of doubled since then. So you never really know where it's going to go. And I would just tell people, invest in properties that make sense, try to invest where you think development's going, buy stuff with cash flow, because when you have cash flow, it gives you holding power, and do it for a long-term investment. It's risky if you are trying to do this for 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years, but if you plan on doing it for 20 years, history will show that real estate has always gone up over 20 years. I think it's more or less always gone up over 10 years, but it hasn't always gone up over 5. And then you just have to get creative. Like, we didn't know anything about house hacking or anything like that when we were getting started, but
we would have done that for sure.
Yeah, and anybody who's young and wants to get into this now, that's typically the first thing I tell them is, you might not like this strategy, you might not be willing to do it, but if you are willing to do it, you can pretty much guarantee yourself success. Buy a duplex, live in the basement, rent the upstairs.
Yeah, 5% down, find a market that you can afford it.
Yeah.
Like it's a good way to get started. Refi after a few years and move on and do it again, right?
Yeah. And the 5% down for somebody that doesn't have a whole lot of cash is a great way to do it, while you've got, probably you're not cash flowing, but you're not paying very much to live there because somebody else is paying the majority, probably 3/4 of the costs, right? For you to live there. So it's a great way to get out of your parents' house, or, do your own thing and not have to always trade your time for dollars. But it definitely opens up that picture. Now, looking back, now that you are networking and there's different options for, you to connect with other like-minded people today, what are some of the things that you wish you knew back then that you could share with somebody today, that they might be able to at least get the information or insights from, so that they're not making the same maybe mistakes as you guys did back then?
I think the main thing that's changed for us in the last couple of years, and I think that part of that is just due to the community that's kind of grown over the last, 5-7 years or whatever, is just knowing that there are other people out there. Like I said at the beginning, we knew nobody who was doing this. So when you're surrounded by people who aren't doing it, it seems kind of crazy. But as soon as you put yourself in the room of like-minded people, what you're doing seems like, oh, I could do so much more. And it just really opens up your eyes to kind of a different experience and a different way of doing it. So I would just say, try to find people that you can connect with. Like, I've connected with an incredible group of women I knew you were speaking there last week, and it was incredible. So I've joined a few groups like that.